Alright, so I'm no doctor, but I'm pretty sure that race we saw today is exactly what most of us race fans needed in a time like this. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove, special edition of this show, esports edition of the show, iRacing version of the show. That's basically what I've been talking about the last week or so, leading up to today's event. But today, in fact, I will be discussing the NASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational series that we watched today on FS1, or that most of us hopefully watched on FS1 today. If you somehow haven't kept up with the news in recent weeks, yes, NASCAR, as well as pretty much every major sport in the entire world, is on hold currently. NASCAR has suspended all of its real racing action between now and May 3rd. In a last-minute deal, NASCAR revealed the Pro Invitational iRacing series, a series that would feature pretty much every Cup Series driver as well as several Xfinity and Truck Series drivers competing on iRacing, a very well-known, very popular simulated racing platform. And today, we got our first look at what this series looks like. It's unclear how many races this is gonna go on for. It sounds like they'd like to do this at least a couple more times during this hiatus, but today, we watched 35 cars race around the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway, and it was awesome. Let me just start off this show by saying it was absolutely awesome. I'll go into detail, I'll talk a little bit about some of the race, I'll talk about the broadcast, I'll talk about the incredible social media reaction to today's event, but in a nutshell, it was awesome. It was a great show, and like I said at the very top of this episode, I think pretty much every race fan, every NASCAR fan needed something like what they got today, so this was the perfect medicine. And so yeah, when I say pretty much every Cup Series driver, these are real drivers. Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr. came out of basically retirement to race in this thing. Bobby Labonte, another former champion. Most of the Cup Series field was in this thing. Keselowski, Logano, Chase Elliott. Clint Boyer was racing as like Fox's in-race reporter. He was very great. He was great. The broadcast was outstanding. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But you had other guys like Timmy Hill, Garrett Smithley, Parker Kligerman, who race in Cup Series pretty regularly, but they're usually in the back, not in the best equipment. They thrive here on iRacing. They have made their names being great at this sim racing platform, and they showed off today. Ty Majeski, Parker Kligerman, like I mentioned, a lot of those guys ran really well today, and were running up front with the likes of Denny Hamlin, with the likes of Dale Earnhardt Jr., with the likes of a lot of great race car drivers that we're used to seeing up front on Sundays. We got to see these other guys kind of show off their iRacing prowess. And a lot of top Cup Series drivers have used iRacing, have raced in simulations before, but they don't necessarily race every week, every night, the way some of these younger guys do. And so it was really interesting to see some of the younger drivers who aren't at the top of the game in the Cup Series but have practiced a lot on iRacing run up front against guys like Denny Hamlin, who has a lot of experience in his career racing simulators, racing on iRacing, everything, but it's not something I would say he does regularly. It was really cool to see how this all played out. Anyway, this was a crazy event. Fox Sports 1 was broadcasting it, cable television, national TV. I'll be really interested to see what the TV ratings look like in a couple days. Hopefully those are revealed. Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, Larry McReynolds commentating the race like it's any other. So like it's the Daytona 500. You had the same broadcasting. It was outstanding. It was an outstanding event, very well put together by Fox. I took a couple screen grabs here just so you get the idea. They had the full-on leaderboard like they usually do on the side. Occasionally they'd have split screen views where they'd show drivers in their homes, or in Jimmy's case, I think in his garage, racing on his very expensive and more IndyCar focused simulator here, his rig. But yeah, they had the whole thing set up here, replays and everything. Very impressive. They even had the guy singing the national anthem in his own garage, and they streamed that alongside the virtual Homestead Miami Speedway crowd. It was surreal. It was a little weird, a little over the top perhaps at times, but extremely interesting, extremely engaging, and most importantly, my favorite word, it was entertaining. Gimmicky, yes, tongue-in-cheek, kind of sarcastic, definitely, but still very fun to watch. Focusing on the broadcast for just a moment, Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon were top of their game. I thought Mike Joy did an incredible job of explaining to a lot of the casual fans tuning in what iRacing was, how it worked, and specifically the kind of odd rules for this race. I mentioned like the resets, or the fixed setups I should say, then the resets, the fact that each driver got 2 chances basically to pit and fix all their damage, because you know in this race, lag happens, weird things happen, because it is online, and these drivers aren't used to racing like that, so there were more wrecks than usual. First half of this race was quite sloppy, especially. So explain to the average NASCAR fan who might be tuning in at home, who really doesn't know much about iRacing, Mike Joy nailed it, Larry McReynolds nailed it, Jeff Gordon nailed it. I'm sometimes a little hard on Jeff Gordon's commentary, but I thought he was very good today. Clint Boyer as the in-race reporter, very fun, very amusing, because he's another guy. Great Cup Series driver, has been around a long time, but he's not the kind of guy who spends very much time on iRacing these days in the sim, if I had to guess. He looked a bit unprepared, you know, figuring it out as he was going along. That's how I felt like a lot of the drivers were kind of dealing with today's race. But he was extremely interesting to listen to. In my episode a few days ago, when I kind of previewed this thing, I made it very clear that I wanted the drivers, teams, everyone, I didn't want them to take it too seriously. And that includes the broadcast. I did not want them to take this too seriously. And they sure as hell didn't. Michael Waltrip was doing the grid walk inside Denny Hamlin's living room. He brought tacos. A great callback to a few years back when he spilled his tacos on Denny Hamlin's car at Texas Race. A beautiful reference that, of course, long-time or even recent NASCAR viewers will relate to, remember, laugh at. It was beautiful. Regan Smith interviewing Dale Jr. in his backyard on the farm. I don't know where he was, but it was great. Fox didn't take themselves too seriously, and as a result, as we'll talk about later in this episode, the drivers and teams didn't take it too seriously either, and that's just resulted in a very, very, very fun afternoon. But yeah, the broadcast was great. Replays were pretty solid. I'm not super familiar with how iRacing works. I'm not sure if Fox was working the iRacing camera setup, or if that was actually iRacing themselves setting it up. I think iRacing was the one that was actually switching between cameras, figuring all that stuff out. So kudos to whoever was directing the broadcast. I thought they did a pretty good job. Didn't miss too many battles for up front. Didn't catch all the wrecks live. That's hard to do, but they at least got most all of them on replay, so we got to go back and look at them. Broadcast was very smooth for the most part. Some audio issues here and there. You could tell Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, it was very much happening on the fly. They were figuring it out kind of as the audience was figuring out, which, given that they put this whole thing together within a week, I don't blame them for having some issues there. It felt real. It felt good. It felt very relatable to the fans at home. It felt like I was watching a Twitch stream, a very high quality Twitch stream on cable television. That's really freaking cool. So great job all around from the Fox guys, the iRacing guys on this broadcast. They hit everything they needed to hit. They were informative, they were entertaining, and they didn't take themselves too seriously, which when you're a real world-class racing series that's forced to run on a virtual racetrack, basically a video game, more or less, you can't take yourself too seriously. And they didn't, and it was incredibly entertaining to watch. This is an exhibition race. No points, no money online. Make it fun. They did just that. All right. Let's talk about the race itself. Specifically what happened in the race and how the racing looked, because I've mentioned this is a simulator. Some of you watching maybe aren't super familiar with iRacing. iRacing is more of a tool than anything, but it's basically a video game. But the physics in the game and the way the cars handle and everything are very similar to how real race cars handle in real life. Obviously, you don't have all the same elements that you do if you're in a real race car with all those G-forces hitting you and everything. It's not quite the same in that respect, but at least as far as the way the cars work around each other in traffic, the way the cars handle, the adjustments you can make, which in this race there weren't many adjustments to be made because all the teams and drivers were running the same setup. It was fixed setups. The cars and the racing are very realistic and very similar to real life. So that's why you had a lot of these Cup guys, opt to do this. That's why they put this show on, because it's literally the closest thing we can get to real NASCAR racing right now in the wake of, all these closures, all this hiatus and everything. All right, but let's talk about the race here because it had an amazing finish, had a lot of great moments. I am going to talk about the social media reaction and some of the reaction around the NASCAR world. We're going to have fun in this episode. This is a very fun day to be a NASCAR fan. It was not a conventional day by any means, but it was very fun. So let's talk about this a little bit. Let's talk about the race. I wrote down a lot of notes. I'm not sure how well I'll stick to them here, but first thing I noticed when they dropped the green flag is that, man, Jimmie Johnson just isn't very good at this thing, is he? Definitely a bit out of practice when it comes to iRacing, but Jimmie Johnson almost immediately was clearly off the pace. 7-time champion, easily the most accomplished real driver in the field. He had nothing for him today. He was off the pace. At one point, he drifted into the middle. He got lapped by the leaders. He got drifted into the middle of the turn and just wiped out in front of the entire top 10. Took out a bunch of cars. Jimmy, what are you doing? Probably the most head-scratching, just unreal thing I've ever seen. Jimmie Johnson absolutely KOing the field, having no idea what he's doing. It was unreal. It was insane. I genuinely thought for a second that NASCAR was going to consider parking Jimmie Johnson because he just couldn't keep his car in a straight line. I love Jimmie Johnson. Obviously, I think he's one of the greatest, arguably the greatest driver in NASCAR history. And you look at what he had to work with. He was racing in what looked like to be an IndyCar setup. His IndyCar, he's supposed to be testing IndyCar stuff this week. So obviously, he wasn't super set up for a NASCAR simulation race. But still, clearly a bit out of practice when it comes to iRacing. I don't know when the last time he ran laps on this simulator was, but it likely has been quite a while. So he was off the pace. He was never a factor in this thing. That was the first thing I noticed. I thought it was incredibly surreal. Early on, a lot of the guys I mentioned earlier who are known for being great at iRacing, like Ty Majeski, Timmy Hill, Garrett Smithley, William Byron, ran up front early on, looked really good. I was surprised Ross Chastain looked pretty good as well. Dale Earnhardt Jr., he'll come to play here when we talk about the finish. He ran really well as well. He's been one of the more, one of the quickest veteran drivers, I would say, to kind of buy into the whole iRacing thing. He's been very supportive of iRacing, of esports the last couple of years, more so than some of his other like older veteran counterparts. So Dale Jr. definitely buys into this thing, and he ran really well early on, and really throughout this entire race, as we'll talk about. Shout out Bobby Labonte as well. Dude's in his mid-50s, hasn't been in a NASCAR Cup car in several years. It's been at least a few years. I can't remember the last time he was in a Cup car. It's been a few years at least. They said on the broadcast he raced hundreds of practice laps. They said over 1,000 practice laps this week to get ready for this thing, and he ran great. I think he ended up finishing 18th or 19th out of 35, which isn't amazing. Not bad, but isn't amazing. But late in this race, he was in the top 10, top 15. Stayed out of trouble for the most part, filling in basically for Martin Truex Jr. Shout out Bobby Labonte, man. That was cool. That was really awesome. He's a Hall of Famer doing this thing, and he was doing it really well. He figured it out very quick. Shows you how realistic this simulation can be. I mentioned earlier that the first half, the first 70%, really most of the race in general was a bit sloppy. You could tell late in the race as Fox kind of started to go outside their window. They told people, whoever was in race control, they said, hey, be a little more relaxed with the yellows here. So the last 20 or so laps went caution-free, even though there were probably a couple spins that might have brought out caution. Anyway, there were a lot of wrecks, especially early on in this thing. I mentioned the Jimmy Johnson one where he was just backing up into the field and took everyone out. That was insane to watch. But besides that just weird wreck, most of the wrecks kind of looked like real NASCAR wrecks. You had a few issues where guys on the straightaways thought they were clear, and because some of the drivers didn't have traditional spotters, or the way spotting works in this thing is very different than real life. They would clear themselves when they weren't actually clear, turn each other into the wall. That happened a couple times to several drivers. But then other times, there was a point where, William Byron just took out Ross Chastain when they were racing in the top five. He just took him out on purpose, it looked like. I mean, he literally turned right on him right before they entered turn one. It was on purpose. It was an on-purpose spin, probably because the couple laps earlier, Chastain had kind of washed up the track and rubbed into Byron, rubbed him out of the groove a little bit. I have to believe that was why Byron wasn't happy with Ross Chastain and just took him out, but it looked like a real wreck. It looked like a real retaliation happening. The new damage model on iRacing looked pretty cool. A lot of guys were having to use their resets, and that mixed up the field. Tire strategy came into play throughout this race with all these cautions. There were different people restarting up front on each restart, so it really created just a wildly entertaining race. I don't know the exact statistics here, but it felt like a lot of guys led laps in this race. It felt like probably we had 10 or 15 different leaders, and this was only a 100-lap race, so that's pretty noteworthy. But now let's talk about the finish of this race. And I know this is an iRacing race. I know this isn't a real NASCAR race, but this is going to go down in history, in my opinion, as one of the classic, most iconic finishes in NASCAR history. Those might be big words. This might be big words. But you guys saw the finish, right? Anyway, Timmy Hill, Garrett Smithley probably were consistently the two fastest cars all day long. They drove away on that final run. However, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Chase Briscoe, and then later Denny Hamlin all had fresher tires than those guys. They ran them down, and it was an insane, the final 10 laps, 12 laps, insane racing inside the top five, watching Jr. try to carve through those guys, watching Hamlin just slice and dice masterfully through that top five. It was a joy to watch, but ultimately it came down to Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Denny Hamlin on the final lap, side by side, door to door. Hamlin's tires about 10 laps fresher than Dale Jr., so you know Jr.'s got an uphill battle ahead of him. Let's look at the final couple corners here. You got Dale Jr., he stands on the gas really early to try and have something for Hamlin off the corner and almost loses control. It was insane. I thought he was going to wedge Hamlin up into the wall and we were going to have a photo finish coming line, or they were both going to wreck and Timmy Hill or somebody was going to win, but Denny Hamlin ends up getting the win. Him and Dale Earnhardt Jr. side by side, door to door for the final lap of this race. Absolutely phenomenal, great racing, and really, really cool to see two veterans who've known each other a long time, both been involved in sim racing for quite a while now, to see them go toe-to-toe. Two of the most high-profile drivers in the sport. That was best case scenario for NASCAR. Obviously, NASCAR probably wanted Dale Jr. to win. I think a lot of fans probably wanted Dale Jr. to win. I wanted Dale Jr. to win, but I'm just thrilled we got an outstanding finish. You could tell Dale Jr. stood on the gas earlier in the corner than he probably would have because he knew Hamlin with the fresher tires was going to have the momentum. That was his only chance. I really thought he was going to just slam Hamlin up into the wall there and just see what happens, but he didn't. He raced clean. Even though these cars aren't real, they treated them like they were precious gems and did not want to put each other in the wall right there. Clean racing, great racing to wrap this race up. An all-time great finish. I'm not kidding there. That was an amazing finish. Just given all the circumstances, you know, no other sports are happening right now. I'll be curious to see what the TV ratings look like for this thing, but this race on Fox Sports 1, you have two high-profile drivers right there. You've got the most popular driver of the last 2 decades in the sport going up against a a, what is he, 2-time Daytona, 3-time Daytona 500 winner now, 3 times. 2 very popular drivers right there having to carve their way through the field in the final laps, ultimately to come side by side, borderline out of control across the line. And you could see it in this clip right here. Denny Hamlin, he has a camera on him in his home racing. Look at the excitement. Fist pumps, cursing. There's a great angle. Where's the other angle on this thing? Yeah, you got his daughter. Yes! But you can see it, you can hear it there. A lot of emotion, excitement winning this thing. Because at the end of the day, he still beat Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson, William Byron, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Bobby Labonte, Dale Jr., Ryan Preece was up there, Ross Chastain, Cup Series guys. And a lot of these guys grew up on the simulators. A lot of these guys pride themselves on being great at iRacing, and Denny Hamlin beat him. So it's still a big deal. No points, no money. In fact, Hamlin's gonna lose money because he's now making donations to charities on behalf of winning the race. So really cool deal there. Great. It was cool to see Denny Hamlin win for that reason, but no money, no anything really on the line here other than bragging rights. And you can see how much it meant to them. In fact, Dale Jr., I watched some of his Instagram, or it was on Twitter, I think, a live stream after the race where he kind of recapped it. He was truly disappointed that he didn't win this thing. I mean, he didn't outright say it, but he was kind of down on himself. He was kind of speaking, monotone. He was just, he looked disappointed that he did not win this race. A race that means virtually nothing. Other than it's a virtual race, I guess. But he was genuinely disappointed he didn't win this thing. I'm all about having fun with this, but I'm glad they still took it seriously, and clearly they did. And that was, that was awesome. That was super fun to watch. Great finish. Happy for Denny Hamlin. Obviously, he's donating money now, good cause and everything. But that was awesome. My heart was beating. I thought Dale Jr. was gonna win for a second. When I saw Hamlin coming, when I saw him get to the outside of him, and I saw Jr. protect bottom, that is the only thing about this. It's a very realistic simulation. They didn't quite get Homestead Miami Speedway just right. The bottom, or the second lane up, was the fast lane route. We all know Homestead Miami Speedway, when you have more than 5 laps on the tires at least, the high line, up around the wall, is the fast lane route. That's the only unrealistic thing about this, but still, you had Jr. protecting bottom, Hamlin rolling alongside. I was as excited watching the final lap or 2 of that race as I've ever been watching any real race. I'll be honest. Now here's the thing, I will make this clear. I prefer real racing. I prefer watching real race cars, real danger, real speed, real all that great stuff. Partially because you can go and watch it in person, and there's nothing beats watching a NASCAR race in person. But this was still fun to watch. Now, I don't think I could sit through and watch an entire 36 race schedule that's just iRacing. I know there's the Coca-Cola iRacing series, and that's basically what that is. And I'll tune in and watch from time to time, but I can't watch every race of that. It's not entertaining enough for me to want to watch every single race. It's not the same as real racing, and that's why I don't watch the Coca-Cola iRacing series nearly as closely as I watch the Cup or Xfinity or Truck series. It's just not quite the same. So as fun, as novel as this was, I wouldn't be able to watch this for 36 races. It would get old at some point. It would get tiresome. We'd find things to complain about. But I do really hope and pray NASCAR, iRacing, everyone is able to put together a few more of these, at least during this hiatus. It sounds like they want to. It sounds like they want to broadcast a few more races. I hope Fox is in with it, or at the very least, they can stream it on Twitch. I mean, anything's fine like that, honestly. I just hope there's a broadcast partner in play. And I hope the Cup guys continue to want to do it, because I would love to watch a few more of these. Again, not sure about a full season. I don't think that would really last, but I'd love to see a few more of these things. It's very fun and very entertaining, especially to pass this time between, real racing and this whole hiatus win. I don't think it should replace real racing. Let me put it that way. I know I sound really excited, really positive about this thing, and it was great. I don't want it replacing real racing. It never will in my mind. But it was very fun, and a lot of people on social media seem to think so as well. On social media, you guys know, it's usually pretty negative, but I'll look through some stuff here. There's a lot of fun things on social media today. It was very fun to pay attention. Sometimes I hate following along on Twitter, but today, the last couple days have been pretty darn fun. Anyway, one thing I really like looking at is all the different drivers, like iRacing rigs and everything. Look at Denny Hamlin's. This was intense. He's got the whole, that thing shaking him around. He's got the 3 huge monitors surrounding him. That's pretty expensive right there. That is out of my price range by far. Compare that to Alex Bowman. Look at this great tweet. Alex Bowman was outstanding on Twitter during this race. Update, I have to pee. Finn, I guess his dog, may take over during the next caution. I'm sure that'll come soon. Look at his rig. Still pretty impressive. Got the big wide curved monitor. Look at that. Eric Jones with the VR headset. I like that. That's pretty cool. Kyle Busch is also looking pretty intense, similar to Hamlin's. Look at Kyle's face. Look at this. He is... I think he's focused. I don't know what that face is. My favorite though is Ty Majeski, one of the greatest iRacers in the world, on the planet. Look at this setup. A lap. He's got a desk fan blowing on it to keep it cool. Come on, Ty. If this is really what he's running on, and he's running as well as he does, because he had a great run. I think he finished in the top 10 today, and he ran up front for a lot of this thing. That's crazy. Anyway, the disparity between the setups, and that's why I've always been high on iRacing. Why I always think iRacing is great if you're a younger fan or somebody who maybe is interested in getting into the world of racing or wants to try their hand at what's it like being a race car driver. I'm losing my voice, oh my god. You don't need a whole lot. You don't need to go out and buy a full-size race car and find your local short track. I mean, you can. That's always a great avenue if you have that opportunity. I'd always recommend that. But if you're like a lot of people out there and don't have those resources at your disposal, just get a nice laptop, steering wheel, get a subscription to iRacing. It's relatively affordable. Anyway, some other great tweets from this thing. Alex Bowman just got cleaned out by Jimmy Johnson. No worries, my virtual crew used a fast repair and it's good as new. Also, I'm eating an Uncrustable. Alex Bowman. Ever since he won that race a couple weeks ago, I've seen just a huge boost in his personality. He was on Sunday Money, MRN's podcast, the other day, or last week, 2 weeks ago. Very funny guy. I like Alex Bowman. I'm becoming a fan. NASCAR Chasm, of course. Here you go. Early on in the race, Kyle Busch was off the pace. He figured it out by the end. He ran pretty well towards the end of this thing. But here you have Garrett Smithley about to lap Kyle Busch. If you don't remember, I think it was last year. Kyle Busch kind of called out Garrett Smithley for being in the way as a lap car. This was in the Real Cup Series. Wow, how the turntables have turned. Indeed, NASCAR Chasm. That's a great grab. Twitter was on fire today. After they crossed the finish line, Chris Buescher just gets destroyed by Kyle Busch on, I guess, the cooldown lap. Oh my goodness me. Jimmy Johnson is like McQueen on the simulator in Cars 3. Not trying to say Jimmy's old, but that is an accurate tweet. And Twitter was on fire. The overall NASCAR community seemed to really come together. Even people who I've known in the past are kind of naysayers when it comes to this whole esports iRacing thing. I saw many of them buying into what we saw today and at least accepting the fact that what we saw today was entertaining. Is it ever gonna fully replace real race cars on a real racetrack? No, I don't think so. But in the meantime, it is sure as heck a whole lot of fun. Drivers played this perfectly, Fox played this perfectly, NASCAR themselves, Steve O'Donnell was great on Twitter today as well. They all played this perfectly. It was a great day to be a fan of NASCAR. Hopefully better things are coming. You know, obviously hopefully this hiatus doesn't last too much longer. Hopefully the May 3rd deadline stands and we get back racing in May at Martinsville, but that's all just, it's too early to tell on all that. But in the meantime, a couple more of these types of races, a couple more of this Pro Invitational series, I think, would be more than welcome. But that's just me. Before I go, I'll do a real quick groovy gauge. I'm gonna give this thing a 90% on the groovy gauge. Was it a clean race? No, there was a lot of sloppy wrecks and everything, but it was wildly entertaining, had a great finish, and it was just, like I said at the very beginning, this is just what the doctor ordered. I don't know what doctor, some racing doctor out there was looking out for us. Whatever you think of iRacing or esports in general, I still think you can't deny that today's race was entertaining. And that's always, very usually, the #1 thing I look for when rating how groovy a race was. How entertaining was it? And this race was entertaining. I'd love to see a few more of these things. I'm gonna give it a 90%, but let me know what you guys think down in the description. Definitely have to grade this race differently than I grade a normal NASCAR race. Just given the circumstances, you have to. I had a whole lot of fun watching today's race. I hope you guys did too. But yeah, that's all I've got for this episode. Got some new videos planned this week, so subscribe if you are new. We talk about NASCAR all throughout the week, every week, even during this hiatus, so stay tuned for more. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, all that great stuff, and a big thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters. I could not do this show without the support I get from each and every single one of you over there on Patreon, so thank you all a ton for supporting me, supporting the show. Once this season gets back going, I'm planning to go out to some more racetracks, and that would not be possible without the amazing support I get from y'all on Patreon, so thank you for being one of my amazing supporters. I'm in a good mood today. I needed something fun like today's race to happen. That just feels good, really feels good. Not a lot of great stuff going on in the world right now. So to have something like that, even just for a couple hours to kind of escape and enjoy, that was really needed. That was really, really awesome. So I hope you all enjoyed that race. I hope you all enjoyed this video, because there will hopefully be many more of these to come in the not so distant future. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you again very, very soon.